All right. So it only made sense to just let you know one more time about Financial Peace University, because we're talking about money today. But again, I just want to encourage you that if you know that you need help in your finances, you need to sign up. On the Connect card, put it in the boxes, like I said earlier, where I took up the offering, so put it in the boxes. But let us know. We will get back in touch with you. You can email Kyle at the office. But it is a great program. Nicole and I did it a number of years ago. We still have our little envelopes and our little thing. You know, you put your cash in there. We're not perfect at it, but we use it a lot. And I promise you, it is great. We know that we need to know how to handle our finances, because when you do that well, life goes so much better. When you do that poorly, life is so much more difficult. It does not matter if you were in college. It doesn't matter if you're 60 years old. You need to learn how to handle your money well. And he'll spend 8 to 10 weeks teaching you how to do that. I'm going to cover some just basic stuff this morning in about 30 minutes or so. So you guys know where we started beginning of January, talking about reaching for our goals for the new year. We don't have to be in a hurry to do that. It's really something you should be thinking about all year long. But January is a great month to do that. So next week is going to be our last week in it. But today, we're doing a little bit about finances. Where we start was with David. If you remember where David was wanting to build the temple for God, the ark had always been in a tent. And David said, man, it's not right for me to be in a house and the ark's in a tent. So he wanted to build a temple for the ark. God said, no, you're not doing it. So what David did is he came up with these long list of plans. It went so far as how much gold was going to be in the forks and the spoons and the bowls that were going to be part of the utensils of the temple. I mean, that's the level of detail that David planned out, wrote down, and handed in public to his son Solomon and said, this is what you need to do to get it done. And so we talked about just learning from that, learning how to plan what your next steps are going to be. And I mean, in planning it to the details, because, you know, the devil's in the details, right? So that's where things often are successful and where things fail. And so we went from there and we started talking about our faith, and we need to be thinking through next steps in our faith. We use that acronym SHAPE, the SHAPE. And so the S stands for your spiritual gifts, like what are the spiritual gifts that God has given to you. The H is for the heart. That's your passion. Those are the things that float your boat, man. You get up in the morning and you are excited about doing this, and whatever this is. The A is your abilities. That means that those are the things that you're just good at it. You were born that way. That's how God made you. You're better at math or science or mechanics. I don't know, but you know, we all have different abilities. The P is your personality, and then the E is your experiences. So as you put together your spiritual gifts and your heart and your abilities and your personality and your experiences, as you put all those things together, you begin to understand how God has shaped you, how God has put you together, and then that's where you aim your faith. You aim your faith at that particular goal. Then last week we talked about the formation of our family. We touched a little bit on marriage, but mainly we talked about children and the children that are part of our lives. We don't all have little kids in the house. Some of them are older, some of them are gone. But these 4 things are still true. You want to build these 4 relationships into the lives of your kids. You want your kids to have a solid, great, and extremely wonderful relationship with Jesus. And not just that your kids know him, but that they are pursuing him. Okay, there's a big difference between those 2 things. You got to know him, okay? And then they're coming after, seeking after Jesus. So you want to build into your children a relationship with Jesus. Secondly, you want to build into your children a great relationship with you. They need to know you. They need to see you. They need to hear you. They need to be around you. They need to watch you following Jesus so they understand what that looks like as a man or a woman. And so you need to build that relationship into them, a relationship with you. Third relationship was they need a relationship with a local church. Because the church is much like your family. I mean, God gave you your family to take care of you, to challenge you, to help you, to hold you accountable, to provide fellowship and relationships, all those types of things. That's why you have your family. Well, God gave us our church family for those very same reasons, so that we are challenged, so that we are taught, so that we understand, so we have fellowship and accountability with one another. Your kids need that, because they're going to grow up and they're going to move out of the house, and you're going to have grandkids, and you're really going to care then. So build that into your kids as and while they are young. They need this relationship with a good, healthy local church. And then the last one was this, that you need to, as a parent or grandparents, as much as you can. This one's a little harder, but you need to find friends for your children that share their faith. So you want your kids to have friends that are their age that share their faith. Because one day, and we've all been there, one day we realize that our children, we're not going to be the greatest influence in our kids' lives. Their friends are. They're going to listen to their friends before they listen to us. They're going to take their advice before they take my advice as a parent. And you want to make sure that your kids have got some friendships that share their faith. Because if they don't, it's just, they're going to get bad advice. So that's what we talked about last week. And then today we're going to be talking about money and really about finances and about God's plan for handling your finances. Now, here's the thing. If you believe that God loves you, and you believe that God has the very best for you in mind, and you believe that He has a future for you, one that is for your good and for your benefit, then it only makes sense that you would take His principles and apply them into your life, in your faith, in your family, and also in your finances. And this is, we kind of get tripped up here, because it's money. Money's really important to us. It's near and dear to our hearts. But if you believe this about God, then you've got to listen to what He says about finances. So before we get into it, it's very simple. There's three of them, and I'm going to tell you what they are in just a second. But before we get there, we got to settle one thing, and this is what we've got to settle: that it's not yours, and it's not mine either. We really have no possession over the things listen, your name may be on the check. I get that, okay? The account, it may be in your name, and it may be tied to your Social Security number. I get you're paying taxes on what you made last. I understand all those things. But in reality, I just want to remind you that it's not yours. And you're not going to take a penny of it with you. And you may actually ruin your children if you leave too much to them. I was reading a couple of weeks ago about this guy. His name is Jeff Bezos, and you may know him. He is the president, the CEO. I think he started Amazon. So we've all got, most people, a lot of, an Amazon Prime account because it's free shipping, right? And it's not a new idea, guys. It's a general store. Right? We used to have those in the old town squares where you go into the general store and you can buy food and you can buy parts for your car, you can buy clothes for your kids and Christmas toys around Christmas time. That's all Amazon is. It's a general store, it's online, and you can buy a bunch of stuff and it shows up at your house like within 2 days for free. So we love Amazon. So it says that this guy's worth, this is a lot of money, $137 billion. Now, it's hard for me to even conceive of $137 billion. But Jeff is going through some struggles right now in his life. And by no means am I making fun of this. But it looks like that he is beginning divorce proceedings from his wife of 25 years. So guess what? Jeff just bounced down from a $137 billion. Now he's worth $68.5 billion. They say that his wife is going to be instantly the richest woman in the world because she's going to be worth $68.5 billion. So that means if you're thinking about it this way, that Jeff just spent $68.5 billion on a girlfriend, which is probably not a great idea, okay, guys? Just saying. But here's the thing. They are the single largest landowner in the United States. They own 400,000 acres of land. I don't know how you even keep up with what you own. You probably hire people to tell you what you actually have. He's got a 30,000 acre ranch in Texas. Look, just a little confession, I coveted. I was like, I wish I had a 30,000 acre ranch in Texas. It would be wonderful. I would take you all hunting, okay? But here's the thing. Look, what would happen if Jeff just decided, you know what, I'm not going to pay my taxes. Like, I've paid for this. I paid cash. I didn't blink. And I'm just not going to pay my taxes anymore. Guess who owns that property if he doesn't pay his taxes for, 5, 7, 10 years? The state of Texas does. So he really doesn't own that property. Matter of fact, the way that God puts it is this, is that we simply are overseers over things that belong to him. So everything you've got, doesn't matter if it's much or little, it belongs to God. Now here's the way the scripture puts it in Psalms 50, verse 10. For all the animals of the forest, they're mine. Of course, this is God speaking. And I own the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know every bird on the mountains, and all the animals of the field are mine. So God says, listen, nothing's yours. There's nothing that I own that is really mine. I'm just kind of an overseer. I don't know how many of you guys do this. As you get older, you should maybe think about this. I don't know if you've got an Edward Jones guy or girl, or one of those Charles Schwab folks type of thing. But what do we do with that, right? We take money that we have earned, that we have saved, and you should be saving. We'll talk about saving in a minute. So you take all that money that you've earned, that you've saved, and you bring it over to them. There's probably electronic transfer, and you say, look, I want you to make me more money. I want you to watch over my money. I want you to oversee my finance. I want you to do this for me. Here's the framework, okay? Here's the boundaries. And we all agree, because they know this is their job. They're working for you. They're just overseeing these things. They're just stewards of your money. They need to be working for your good. So just tell me what you would think if they thought, and they said, you know what? They've got plenty. I'm really struggling. I'd like a new truck. So, we'll just move a little out of their fund into my fund, and I'm going to go get a brand new truck. It's going to be a nice truck. Or maybe they think, you know what, my family, they haven't had a vacation for a long time, so we're going to take a little bit from yours, and we're going to put it into mine, and then we're going to go celebrate this grand vacation on your dollar. And then you find out about this. You find out, and you're like, what are the emotions that go through your mind? You're like, wait a minute. There's hurt, probably immediately followed by anger, followed by a phone call to the police station about theft of property and misappropriation of funds, because they took what was yours that they were merely overseers of, and they used it for their own benefit. Now, it's crystal clear to us how that is wrong. I mean, it's just not right for anybody to do that with my money. And I mean, I entrusted it, and I knew you were going to make your money along the way. I don't have a problem with that, but really have an issue with you taking what is mine and using it for you. But it's the same thing when it comes to what we've got. It's not ours, it's his. And you're a steward over these things. You're just an overseer over it. And we as people, and we're talking about, we misappropriate God's funds. In a sense, we steal from him, because God has said, look, here's the boundaries, here's the framework, here's how I want all this stuff handled. And we ignore what he says about these things. So you just gotta settle in your mind that it's not yours, because if you don't believe that, if that doesn't register in your brain, then you're not going to listen to another word that I say, okay? So we settle that one. So when you get to God's financial plan for your life, there's 3 simple things that God outlines in the scripture, and it is giving, it is saving, and it is spending. Everything you do with the money that you've got and the resources that you have are going to fall into one of those categories. Dave's going to spend 8 to 10 weeks to tell you all the details with all that stuff, but at the bottom line, that's how money works. Giving, saving, and spending. So in that order, and that's the order in which God kind of just lays it out for us. So let's talk about giving real quick. There's some principles here that you need to know about. The first principle is this, is that giving comes first, right? Okay? Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your produce. Now, I'm going to just take a minute. We're going to stop, and then I'm going to talk to you personally as person, and then we'll dive back into the message in just a second. I get it. I'm a preacher. I've been doing this a long time now. I talk about money. People start sweating and they get angry and they're like, I came to church the first time. It's been a long time, and that's what we're talking about. Hey, I get it. I understand it. Okay, but here's the thing. We know this about Jesus. Jesus spoke more about money than he did heaven and hell. Okay? And the reason why is because really it has more impact on how we behave in this day than the concepts of heaven and hell, even though it should be vice versa. It's just not, because it affects every area of our life. And then last week, and this really, I was probably hope maybe, I don't know, God or not, but I'm going to talk about it. Last week, I saw this documentary, and maybe this was before your time, on this guy by the name of Jim Baker and Tammy Faye Baker. So this was back in the 80s. I don't even think I was a Christian back then when they did all this crazy stuff. She was a lady, if you've seen on Saturday Night Live, she cried and all the mascara ran. But so basically, he was a pastor, and let me tell you, he was talking about money all the time, and he was stealing it. He went to jail for fraud. It was one of these televangelists. There's a lot of money flowing in. I'm sure he didn't start off that way. It's just where he ended up in the later part of his life. And I mean, they misappropriated God's funds. Does that happen in church? Yes, it does. It has. I mean, that's why people have a problem with it sometimes, is because people have misused it and they have abused it. But I know that I live somewhat in a fishbowl, okay? So I just want to be honest with you just for a moment. Nicole and I, we tithe, and that means 10%. We actually give more than that, okay? I'm not going to be any more specific than that, but we give more than that. The capital campaign that we started last year, we give to that over and above what we give on a monthly basis to this church for our finances. You can talk to people that I work with. You can talk to the deacons that I serve with. But I just can assure you from me as your pastor, I'm not saying anything that I'm not doing, okay? So, okay, there's that. Okay, now we'll go back to the sermon. All right, so giving. Number one, that's got to be first. It's the first fruit, the first part of your wealth. Because if something is a priority to us, that's typically what we do first. I will tell you that in the morning, coffee is a priority for me. Like the first thing that I do in the morning is I get up, I go straight to the coffee pot. And actually the coffee starts the night before. I don't know if it does for you or not. So at the night before, I make sure that the coffee starts before I ever intend on getting out of bed. So that when I get out of bed, the coffee pot is full. The honey's set out because, trying to save some calories over the sweetener right now. So the honey's set. I set my cup out. The spoon is sitting there so I don't have to do anything but a little honey, some coffee stirred up, and I am good to go. So those things that are a priority to us, those are the things that we typically do first in our lives. And if God is a priority to us, then that is typically something that we do first, that we give first. Second principle is this, is that it is God who gives us the ability and the opportunity and the power to make wealth. In Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 18, it says that you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the power to get wealth, that he may confirm his covenant that he swore to your fathers as it is to this day. Now, Deuteronomy was a long time ago, okay? But the principle that God enables you to make wealth, to get wealth, to be rich, to be successful, at whatever level that you're at, it is God who has given you the brains and the opportunity and the chance and the drive and the ambition to do those things. Now, he did that for the Hebrews so that other people would look at them and think, wow, their God is awesome. So he wanted their wealth to be a witness to his goodness. But what happens with us is that our wealth ends up getting spent on us so often, and it fails to be the witness that God desires for it to be to him. And so it's God that blesses us in these ways to bring about a witness of how good God is to his people when they are faithful to him. Third principle is this, is that when you give, God promises to take care of you. God promises that everything's going to be okay. Here's what he says. There's three principles in here for you. Number one is this, that give and you will receive. So that means that if you give, that God promises that you will receive. Now, we'll talk about that in just a second, but you will receive if you give. Second principle is this, that your gift will return to you in full. Okay, so it means what you've given is going to be given back, pressed down, shaken together to make room for more, poured into your lap, running over. So the implication is that what do you give? Listen, God's going to outgive you. God's going to outgive you. You think he can't, you think he won't, but he will. That's the principle there that Jesus says. And then he says this is a third principle. The amount you give is going to determine the amount that you get back. Now, you've got to be careful with this because, yes, people have abused it. But you don't want to negate what Jesus said either, that the amount that you give is what God is going to give you back. And so my question, okay, as a giver, just like you, is like, why would God set it up this way? Why would God say, listen, man, you got to give before I'm going to give? Why does he do that? Well, because it's a test of my faith. It's a test of your faith. It's a litmus test to see whether or not you're going to trust him with something that is so incredibly integral to your life. It's a test of us. He wants to know if we're willing to give to him before we receive anything back from him, because we don't know, and this is absolutely true, you don't know how he's going to give back to you. You don't know when he's going to give back to you. You don't really even know if the giving is not going to be until after you're dead, and then you receive what he's promised you. So there's really no necessarily guarantee that financially in this life, God's going to give you more than what you've given to him. But it's a test of your faith. God promises that you give, that he is going to take care of you. Fourth principle is this, that what you give is nothing. It is nothing compared to what you're going to receive. Whatever you give is nothing compared to what you are going to receive. In Luke 12, it says, fear not, little flock, that's us, for it is your Father's good pleasure. I mean, God can't wait to give you his kingdom. So sell your possessions and give to the needy. Provide yourselves with money bags that do not grow old, with a treasure in the heavens that does not fail, where no thief approaches and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And so Jesus is saying, man, you don't have to wait. That $100,000 you got in the bank, it ain't nothing. The $100 you got in the bank, that ain't nothing. Well, you know that's nothing. But it's nothing. It's nothing. You give that, and it's nothing compared to the kingdom that God says, I want to give to you. So we've got to remember that what we give, whenever we give, that God is going to give us these things back in receipt to us. And so there's nothing in comparison to what we give that we're going to get back. We talked a couple of months ago about two people. There was this widow. She had a little copper coin and she was giving, and they were at the temple and the treasurer was there, and Jesus was watching people give. It got a little awkward, but so he was watching, and he watched her drop the small copper coin in there. Okay, and she gave everything that she had to live on. It was everything she had. And then later on, there's this guy by the name of Zacchaeus. I guess he was short. He couldn't see Jesus. And he climbed up in the tree, the sycamore tree. If you've been in church, you sung that song. And Jesus is coming through. And he was like, hey, I got to have lunch at your house. And they go to Zacchaeus' house, and Zacchaeus gets saved. And he's so excited about what God has done in his life. He said, you know what, I'm going to give half of everything I've got to the poor, and I'm going to pay back everybody I've cheated 4 times whatever I've cheated them. I'm giving all that money back to them. And Jesus he was floored at them. So here's the thing. The widow, guess what? She's still alive. And Zacchaeus, he is too. Matter of fact, they're in heaven. And they've received this kingdom that God has promised them. So my question to you is this, do you think there's any regret there? I mean, do you think the widow ever thinks to herself in heaven, if I'd have just held on to the thing, I mean, it wasn't anything, but it's all I had to live on. I wish I would just pretended like I was given. I don't know, make everybody think I was, but I really wasn't. Do you think there's any regret in her life? I don't think so. And then what about Zacchaeus? Do you think he's up there in heaven thinking, man, I wonder if I could have got away with just giving a quarter away, not a half. I mean, he was happy. Jesus was happy either way. So maybe didn't have to be a half. It was a quarter. Maybe I could have got away with a quarter. Maybe not pay him back 4 times, but just do what's legally right. Just pay him back, what I stole from them, plus a little bit of interest on the side. Do you think either of them regret the decision that they made? And I don't think anybody in us here would say that, that they regret it. They don't, because listen, they have received so much more than what they gave, and the same thing is true for us. So the last principle about giving is this. Don't miss being rich toward God. Don't miss being rich toward God. Now, that doesn't matter how much money you make or how much money is in your bank, okay? You can have a little, you can have a lot. You can be rich with a little towards God, and you can be rich with a lot towards God. I mean, y'all get that, okay? So here's a parable that Jesus told in Luke chapter 12. Jesus told him a parable saying the land of a rich man. Now, he was already rich. That's important to know. So he's already rich. God's not mad at him for being rich. The land of a rich man produced plentiful. So he's rich, and he just, boom, just hit another home run. Okay? So it's produced plentiful, and he thought to himself, man, what am I going to do? It's like I'm already rich, and my barns are already full, and they're already big barns. I don't know what to do with all the extra stuff that I just made. He's like, so what shall I do? I've got nowhere to store my crops. He said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to tear down my barns, even though they're full. I'm going to tear them down and go build bigger ones so that I can store all the extra that I just made, even though I was already rich and hit a home run. Now really going to be okay. And he says to myself, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. But God said to him, fool, this night your soul will be required of you. And the things that you have prepared, whose will they be? Well, they'll belong to the girlfriend. So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. So God's not angry at the guy being rich. What Jesus was trying to point out is you're rich, you just hit a home run, you're killing it in every way, and you have failed to be rich toward God. And so don't make that mistake. And again, it doesn't matter how much money you have. We can all be rich toward God at whatever level of income we have. It's going to look differently because we all make and have more money than others. But that's the principle is that we are rich toward him. Okay, second thing about God's financial plan is saving. Now, this has been around a long time. I just want to give it to you. It's good. It's the 10-20-70 plan. So that means you give 10%, you save 20%, and you live and you spend 70% of your income. We have to learn how to save, and that it is a biblical principle for you, because God knows, as do you and I, that not everything is going to be great all the time. Sometimes things are going to break down. There's going to be needs in our life, and we're going to need more money than we have at the moment, and you need to have money set aside for those things. I did a little research, which I knew what the research was going to say anyway, but I did it. Do you know that 40% of adults today, if they were to have an emergency, they could not come up with $400 in cash for an emergency? Couldn't do it. The median savings, and I don't know if this was household or person, I think it was household, is $4,830 is what they have in savings accounts. Now, we're adults. Your tires are going to go bad. Your car is going to break down. Somebody's going to get sick. The washing machine's going to go out. The refrigerator's going to break. I mean, you get it. There's going to be $4,800 does not go far at all. You know that it just doesn't. And so we need to understand the principle of saving, and you need to be disciplined enough not to spend everything you make so that you can save. Because that is another way in which God makes sure that you are provided for. And if you ignore this biblical principle and you spend everything you've got and you have an emergency, I don't know what to tell you. Because God says is you need to make sure that you're setting money and resources aside. Here's what Solomon, who wrote Proverbs, was a master at looking at people and looking at nature and learning things. And so this is where this comes from. He says, go to the ant, you sluggard, and consider her ways. It means think about what the ant's doing, okay, and be wise. And that means just do what she does. Without having any chief, officer, or ruler, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest. So there's nobody making the ant do it. There's nobody telling the ant to do these things. She just does it because she knows what's going to happen, and we're people and we should know what's going to happen too. And so he says, how long will you lie there, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep? A little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a robber and want like an armed man. Hey, the squirrels, they get it, right? I sit in my chair, we're watching, drinking the coffee, watching the sun come up in the mornings, and the squirrels are digging holes everywhere. I'm like, what are they doing? They're looking for the acorns. I don't know if that squirrel did it. I've always wondered how they knew where they hid the acorns. I think that they just keep digging until they find them. But they know they're there because somebody stored the acorns down there. And they dig them up and they eat them in the wintertime because they knew, somebody intuitively understood that these things, I'm not going to have any food in the wintertime unless something is stored up. And so that's what they do. That's what God is telling us. We've got to make sure that we do. And so don't get lazy. Video games will kill you. They will impoverish you. They will kill your marriage, going to sleep and sleeping all hours of the day and not getting up and going to work. Let me just say, God doesn't like lazy. I repeat that to my kids all the time. God doesn't like lazy. God put the man and the woman in the garden to work the garden, and we are created to work. When we don't work, we get in trouble, okay? So here's what Proverbs 21 says. The wise have wealth and luxury. Why do the wise have wealth and luxury? Is it because God liked them more than the other people? No. It's because they saved money. Because they didn't spend everything that they had. He said the fools are the ones that go and spend everything that they get. And so if we go out and we spend everything that we get and we put another payment plan on another thing, if your boat and your truck, and I was at Discount Tire the other day and needed to get tires. They said, do you want to put your tires on a payment plan? I'm like, Lord, if I need to put my tires on a payment plan, I don't need tires that bad, okay? Like, this is wrong. And so we indebt ourselves in so many different ways. But you spend everything you got and you will end up in poverty. So you've got to learn how to save. Here's a couple of wrong motives for saving, because saving can turn to greed. There's a real fine line in there. You've got to be careful with this. But number one is this. You don't want to save out of fear of the future. You don't want to save out of fear for the future, because God tells us that perfect love drives out fear. God loves you. He cares about you. He wants the very best for you. And so you don't need to save out of fear. Secondly, you don't need to save out of greed either. All right? And here's what Proverbs 18 says. The rich think their wealth as a strong defense, and they imagine it to be a high wall of safety. Now, there's two sides to this. I think people who just lately come into money, maybe they're making money for the first time in their life, and they begin to think, man, I finally made it. The wealth is here. The wall is in place. I'm going to be safe. I'm going to be secure. But then if you're around people that have wealth for a little while, and it's maybe been some years since they've earned a little bit of wealth, I think typically the wealthy realize that money really isn't a wall. And that's what creates anxiety in their lives. And that's what really feeds this whole idea of I've got to have more and more and more, because they begin to realize that this wall that I've built for myself, this safety net that I think I've created for myself and for my family, really isn't that much of a safety net. And at any moment, the markets could turn and I could lose everything that I've got. And I think that's what feeds the mind of those who kind of move from saving wisely into greed. They start realizing that it's not a wall. It's really not a refuge. And they're not trusting in God as their wall or God as their refuge. They're really looking at the money. And so they've got to have more and more and more and more. And there's never enough. And if you get to that place, that's the place where you know you've gone wrong, when it's never quite enough for you and you're not being rich toward God. Those are red flags for us. So just keep this in mind. The love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. And by craving it, many, have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pains. Okay, so you got giving, you got saving, and now you got spending. So that's 70%. And we know what we spend money on. I mean, all the things that we need, some of the things that we want. I mean, we get that. We spend our money. But what happens is that we spend more than what we make, and we end up in debt. I was listening to this video a minute ago. 16 credit cards? That is insane. I mean, I guess if you want another credit card, they'll probably give you one. I don't know if you've looked at the interest rate that they charge you, but it's crazy. It's not healthy for you or your family or anything else. So if you've got everything, I mean, there's a reason for some debt in your life, and so don't think I'm saying that. But if you've got everything you own on some payment plan because you can't afford to pay cash for it, then something's gone awry in your thinking. And what Dave Ramsey is going to tell you when you get to there is that pay cash. Pay cash for whatever it is that you want, because if you can't pay cash, then you probably cannot afford that thing. And so if your boat's on payments and your four-wheeler's on payments and your Polaris is on payments and your vacation's on payments and now you're having to put your bills on payments, there's something going on here that is not good for you. And you need to get a hold of your finances and put things back together again. Contentment, I will tell you, will go a long way for you. Here's what Paul says in Philippians 4. He says, I've learned. So this is a learning process. You're not born with this. You have to teach yourself these things. I've learned how to be content with whatever I have. I know how to live on almost nothing, okay? And I also know how to live with everything. I've learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it's with a full stomach or an empty stomach, with plenty or with little, for I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. And so in this life, more than likely, you will be poor, and you will need to learn how to be content with poverty. And more than likely, some point in this life, you will have more, and you may be rich, and you will need to learn how to be content with much. Contentment is not based on the amount of money. It's based on the condition of your heart, okay? So you've got to be content. You've got to learn that. One of the ways in which you do that, you keep your life free from the love of money. I mean, what it provides, what it does for you, what it offers. It says in Hebrews 13, keep your life free from the love of money. Be content with what you have. For he has said, that means God has said, I will never leave you, nor will I ever forsake you. So as we've talked through all of this stuff about what your next steps are, okay, your family and your faith and also your finances, just think through, okay, like where's giving, where's saving, where's spending, where am I in all of these three different places, and what needs to change in each of them, and to begin aligning your life and how you handle all the finances you've got with God's principles, because I go back to Deuteronomy chapter 8, because God wants to bless you so that you are a witness to his goodness to his people. Let's pray together.